right, so today we're bringing you another special dish, and we got a special guest, Carlos, here. And Carlos, what are we gonna go ahead and cook today? Tell us.
Well, today we're gonna make some ribs. We're gonna make some St. Louis style ribs, and we're gonna show you how to prep them. We're gonna show you how we actually put some rubs on them and put them on the smoker.
I'm excited. Let's get started.
All right, sounds good. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the membrane off the back of the ribs. You notice that little thick thing? If we don't take the membrane off, what's gonna happen is when we put the rub, it's not gonna get absorbed into the meat. So the first thing you're gonna do, just use a regular butter knife. Go to the end, just get underneath the membrane as much as you can. And then with the paper towel, you're gonna use the paper towel to get the corner. As much as you can. And then just grab a hold with the other hand, hold on, and there you go. Simple.
Absolutely, because nobody wants to eat that, right?
No, you don't want to eat this stuff. You want the flavor to penetrate into the meat. So it's pretty easy. All right. So what I usually do is try to get as much fat as I can. And a lot of people don't like eating ribs, and they bite into it and it's just a bunch of fat on it. So what I'll usually do is I'll do this a little bit, and with the knife, I'll just get all the fat. It doesn't render as much when you put it in the smoker. So we want to get as much as we can off of this. Now we're not going to do competition style, so please don't judge me. I usually cut the rib tips off, but this is just gonna be for backyard. Usually for competition, you wanna make sure this is all nice and pretty, but this is just gonna be for a bunch of friends. So all this fat right here, we're gonna cut off as much as we can. Don't worry about leaving a little bit of fat because that is flavor. But if it's a little bit thick, just trim that off. Now at the end of the ribs, you're gonna have this big old giant flap right here. It's like a piece of ham. I usually trim this off. It doesn't taste very good. There's a lot of fat underneath it. So what I'll do is just trim it off. And what I'll do is I'll use that end to make like a bean soup. Right here, this is really good for making some like baked beans. So it's not good for barbecue. All right, so now I've trimmed the ribs, and now what I'm gonna start doing is putting some of the rub on there. So I use 3 types of rubs. The first one I put on here is called pecan. It's just pecan rub, doesn't matter what kind. And I always start with ribs face up when I'm putting these on. And the reason for that, I want my ribs face up at the end. I'm gonna put them on the grill with ribs, with bones down. Okay, so that's good. To speed up the process a little bit, just push down the rub. Rub doesn't mean rub it. Right, Nadine?
Correct.
So all we're gonna do is let the meat in the rub start to absorb all the spices and everything inside of it. So we're gonna wait a few minutes until it starts to glisten. Then we're gonna be ready for the next rub. So we're gonna put a total of 3 types of rubs. One of them is pecan. The other one that I use is called Sweet Money. It's a championship rub. This is by Big Papa as well. I'm gonna start asking Big Papa for some sponsor money. They're one of my favorites.
Soon, we're gonna go ahead and get the sponsor money.
Right. And then the next one I'm gonna use is called Trinity. This is Simply Marvelous. Is another rub that one of my favorites, and this is Trinity. So, all right. So it's been a few minutes, probably about 10 minutes since we put the first layer of rub, and you start seeing this little glisten right here. So you starting to look a little wet. So now that it's doing that, we want to put on the next rub. It's going to seem like a lot of rub on here, but believe me, it'll start to melt once we put it in the smoker, so don't worry about it too much. And notice I put little bags. These are actual gloves that I put over it so I don't contaminate the container. It just keeps it clean. You want to make sure you don't get your guests sick, you know, by contaminating things. Okay. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna let it sit here. We're gonna let it glisten again, and then we're gonna put the last one. Now, typically what we do is we'll put this overnight. I'll put all this stuff in the refrigerator overnight, and then in the next morning, it's ready to go on the smoker. So you don't have to do all this prepping early in the morning at 5 in the morning. You can do everything at night, and then you put it in the smoker, and it actually marinates a little bit more. So it's probably a good idea to do it the night before, but they still come out really good. All right, so now we're gonna put the third and final rub. Now, one of the things that, like I was telling you, Nadine, earlier, was that I always put the rubs that have the thicker pieces of salt. You're gonna notice that in here, you're gonna have big giant flakes of salt in here. You always wanna put the big rocks first, right? The big pieces first, and then the rub with the thinner stuff on top. So we're gonna do this, we're gonna repeat, we're gonna flip these over, and we're gonna do the same exact steps. So it's gonna be a few more minutes, and then it'll be ready to go on the smoker. All right, so now that we have ribs have been, we have all the spices and all the rubs on here, it's ready to go on the smoker. And we wanna make sure that it's ribs down. Right now I just have it on smoke, so it's gonna smoke on a really light, maybe at about 180 degrees, really slow and low. All right, we're ready. So I always use a 3-2-1 method. So we're gonna smoke it for 3 hours, and then after that, we'll come back and I'll show you the next step. All right, so the next step, now that the ribs have been smoked for 3 hours, is we're gonna wrap them up. So what I did was I cut some pieces of foil, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some agave. You could use regular honey. I like to use agave because it's just thinner, it's easier to work with. So I'm gonna put that on the bottom. I'm also gonna use some brown sugar. I'm putting this on before I put the ribs because I'm gonna put the ribs face up so the meat on the bottom starts to baste. I'm also gonna put a little bit of butter on the bottom. Ribs. Put it upside down. Like that. And I'm gonna repeat the same thing on top. Put a little bit of honey, brown sugar, and this is gonna help caramelize. And butter again. Now, the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some peach nectar. Okay, you can buy this at any store. I'm just gonna put a little bit underneath, not too much, and that's it. So now it's ready to wrap. Let's seal this up as tight as I can. And I'm gonna double wrap it. I want everything to steam inside of it, so it's ready. The other thing too I'm going to do is I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit. Right now it's at about 150. I'm going to crank it up to about 220, 225. Okay. And I'm going to repeat the process with the other 2 sets of ribs. All right, so ribs are now wrapped. So like I was telling you earlier, I have the ribs face up. We want the meat on the bottom because it's all that good stuff, all the juices are going to start to flow, and it's going to be on the bottom. So it's going to start to baste the meat. So I want to make sure that the meat is on the bottom, all right? We're going to leave it here for a couple of hours and come back and then finalize everything. All right, we'll see you guys in a few. All right, so These are ready to come off the grill. They've been smoking. They've been basting inside, wrapped in the foil. So now what we're gonna do is take them off. So we can already start smelling it. You'll notice that there's gonna be a lot of steam coming out of these, so you have to be careful to not burn yourself. And this is what it looks like. See how you can already see the meat coming off of the bone, right? It's almost ready. And this is another reason why you want to make sure that it's meat down and bone face up, because you want to make sure that it's basting on the juice. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we need to take these and put them back on the grill with bones down though. Tricky here. Super hot, so be careful. Okay, so we are ready to pull these ribs off the grill and serve. Likes that off the bone look, so exactly what these are. All right, let's ready to serve.